The lost sheep of Israel does not mean he includes the Greeks or anyone else, right? The Gentiles are not included, the lost sheep of Israel only, okay? So then when we look at your New Testament, we see this Greek language. Well, where the hell did this come from?
We did not send a messenger except to teach in the language of his own people. So there's your Greek prophet, so there had to be one sent to the Greek-speaking people. The onus is on you to tell us who that Greek prophet was.
The lost sheep of Israel does not mean he includes the Greeks or anyone else, right? The Gentiles are not included, the lost sheep of Israel only, okay? So then when we look at your New Testament, we see this Greek language. Well, where the hell did this come from?
You got to educate yourself, man. Stop coming with these elementary arguments that Muslims have been bantering, throwing around, man, for decades, man. It's time to get educated, man. More stupid, ridiculous arguments. And what I'm saying to you is the Quran has Hebrew prophets speaking Arabic. Moses did not know or speak Arabic. Neither did Jonah. Neither did Elijah, neither did Zechariah. But they're all speaking Arabic when we go to the Quran. So you trying to make an argument that Jesus's primary language was Aramaic and yet the Gospels were written in Greek is stupid and futile. Because now you're going to have to account for why he's speaking Arabic when we get to the Quran. Come on, bruh. Exercise a little bit of intelligence, man.
Unlike Christianity, which came up in an environment of critical thinking. I mean, you know, a Greco-Roman world, you know, the philosophical mind is inherently skeptic, with no power, you know, for 3 centuries. You know, the church did its fighting theologically, right? Islam has never been under that type of scrutiny until it started moving west. And then the biggest death nail, excuse me, that I believe the seeds of its own destruction were sown when it decided to, universalize its message through social media. And in return, social media just like backfired on it.
Here, let me help you out. Here's the specific verse that you guys use. Chapter 2, verse 79 of the Quran. Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 79.
And what does it say?
It says, woe unto those who write the scriptures with their own hands and claim that it came from God.
Yes.
Right. And all of your earliest medieval scholars say that that's talking about the Talmud and not the Bible. But the first problem that you have is all the prophets were told by Yahweh to write down the message. Moses, Isaiah, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Jeremiah. They all wrote down the scripture with their own hands and said, Ad-Davar Yahweh. This is the word of Yahweh. So that verse condemns all of the true prophets by the way in which your prophet was commanded by Allah to follow their guidance, because he gave them a book according to Surah 6, ayah 84 through 90.
What language did Jesus speak?
He spoke 3 languages. It's known as Trilingualism.
Name them.
Hebrew, Greek, and Aramaic.
What was the main language used at that time?
If he was speaking socially, he would have been using Aramaic. If he was teaching from scripture or having a theological discussion, it would have been Hebrew. If he was doing business in the marketplace or something like that, he would have been using the lingua franca, which would have been Koine Greek.
The main language that was used in that time was Aramaic. Correct or not?
Was it?
What?
Was it?
Yes.
I told you, Jesus was trilingual as well as all of his apostles.
So what was the main language spoken in that area?
The main languages was 3 languages, I just told you.
Now, when I ask you what language Jesus spoke, I'm asking the same question. What language do they speak in America? I know there's a lot of languages.
If Jesus was having a discussion with the Pharisees about Scripture, he would have been using the heavenly tongue, which would have been Hebrew, Ivri. If he was in a synagogue, reading from Scripture, like he was in chapter 4 of Luke, he would have been reading in Hebrew. If he was having a basic discussion with some cats in the neighborhood, right, he would have been using Aramaic. If he would have been making transactions and things like that, because his apostles were fishermen, they would have been using the lingua franca, which would have been Koine Greek.
What language was the first language you spoke?
Here, let me just
leave. There's another guy joined. It's not fun to talk to like 10 people.
Well, it's not fun talking to somebody who's trying to make ridiculous points. What language is Isa ibn Maryam speaking in the Quran?
What?
When I go to the Quran and it claims Jesus is speaking,
yeah.
When he says Allah has made me a prophet, what language is he speaking?
The Prophet, Muhammad.
No, what language is Jesus speaking in the Quran?
Aramaic.
Okay, so there's Aramaic in the Quran.
I'm not sure.
But the Quran states that it is a pure, it's a Quran written in Arabic. So an Aramaic speaking person can read an Arabic Quran and understand it. See, the argument that you're trying to make is that Jesus spoke Aramaic. Yes. And then you're going to claim that the word Aloha sounds almost like Allah. More stupid, ridiculous arguments. And what I'm saying to you is, the Quran has Hebrew prophets speaking Arabic. Moses did not know or speak Arabic. Neither did Jonah, neither did Elijah, neither did Zechariah. But they're all speaking Arabic when we go to the Quran. So you trying to make an argument that Jesus' primary language was Aramaic and yet the Gospels were written in Greek is stupid and futile. Because now you're going to have to account for why he's speaking Arabic when we get to the Quran. Come on, bruh. Exercise a little bit of intelligence, man. Here, let me read.
You will eventually become Muslim, I think.
Oh, okay. Let me read this to you. This is Bernard Spolsky. In his book, The Languages of
Quran and keep
hang on. No, I've read it numerous times, and that's how I know it's false. Bernard Spolsky, in his book, The Languages of the Jews, A Socio-Linguistic History, Cambridge University, page 62, he says, after the destruction of the first temple by the Babylonians and the return from Babylonian exile, Hebrew Aramaic bilingualism began. So after the Jews came back from their 70-year captivity in Babylon, they spoke a bilingual language, which was Hebrew/Aramaic. It was later succeeded in the Hellenistic Roman period by a trilingual Hebrew, Aramaic, Greek pattern that laid the foundation for diaspora Jewish multilingualism. Once again, Jesus was trilingual. Here's Jewish scholar Robert H. Stein in his book, Jesus the Messiah, A Survey of the Life of Christ, page 87. Jews of the first century lived in a trilingual environment. Thus, although Jesus' native language was Aramaic, he could also converse in Hebrew and Greek. It may even be that he was familiar with certain Latin terms due to the influence of Rome and its legions and its administrative officials. My brother, Do research before you come on stage making arguments in a Quran-only Christian's room. Let me hit you with one more gem. This is the Wycliffe Dictionary of Biblical Archaeology, Chief Editor Charles F. Pfeiffer. He states that the translations of scripture into Aramaic known as Targums were oral rather than written until the early centuries of the Christian era. Hebrew continued to be used by the religious leaders and never died as the language of prayer and scripture. It was used by the Qumran community as the language of devotion and instruction as late as the 1st century AD. Once again, the language of prayer and the reading of scripture was always Hebrew. So every time you go to the Gospels and Jesus is engaging religious leaders, they're speaking Hebrew. Every time he's praying, like when he prayed in the Garden of Gethsemane, he's praying in Hebrew. You got to educate yourself, man. Stop coming with these elementary arguments that Muslims have been bantering, throwing around, man, for decades, man. It's time to get educated, man.